I think success in parenting means a lot of trial and error. You have to try things with your kids to see if they work. You have to measure your success. You have to double down on the things that work and experiment with the things that don't. Then, every kid is different, which means you have to repeat the process for each one. But you do have the benefit of having past experiences, which can help suggest things that might work. If this sounds a little like parenting as a scientific experiment, in a way I think it is. You have to just keep trying to find techniques that will set you and your child up for success. Obviously, reading books from experts will get you far, because you can learn quickly from others what has worked and what hasn't, and often these tips are coming from people with clinical degrees and years of research. There's no substitute for years of research. Talking to other parents, too, can get you some great ideas. So here are a few things that I've learned from lots of experimentation that make things work smoothly with my kids. As with any advice, your mileage may vary. Tip number 1, answer all the why questions. Assuming you have a human child, you'll be bombarded with why questions, especially during their early years. Everything you tell them will get the response of why. This completely infuriates some parents. I'm not sure exactly what the cause of the anger is, but I suspect it's because the why questions literally never stop. But trust me when I say that the why questions are your best opportunity ever to build a solid foundation for your child, because you have their full attention and you can teach them so much. Your detailed answers can help inspire their lifelong curiosity about life. You have the opportunity to instruct them about so many things. You'll be building a relationship with them, which will be the foundation of everything else you need to do with them. If you haven't already listened to Difficult Conversations, this is exactly the kind of thing I was talking about in that episode. I think sometimes the why questions are frustrating because as adults, we think we're supposed to know all the answers. And it's not uncommon for our little ones to ask us things we have no idea the answers to. This is where we can encourage their curiosity and build good lifelong learning habits and set a good example. We can do something our parents didn't have the capability to do. We can take our children over to the computer and say, I don't know myself. Let's learn the answer to this together. You can read or watch a video and then summarize anything they don't understand. This is an amazing way to bond with your child. Show them that they need to always be learning, and you'll learn a lot of interesting things yourself. For example, this is how I learned that scientists do not know how glue works. Really. There's some competing theories, but we literally do not know for sure what it is doing. Seems like something we should know by now, right? Tip number 2, don't abruptly end an event. Set some expectations. I noticed a few playdates that ended with our little people's friends in tears as their parents picked them up and said it was time to go. This seemed unfortunate, and all I could think was, there has to be a better way to end a playdate than having your entire experience abruptly cut short. This is the kind of thing that would get an adult upset as well, so imagine the impact on a child. It wasn't hard to think of a good solution to this. Don't spring the departure time on them at the actual time of departure. Let them know when it's coming. Set their expectations. I always called this the 15-minute warning, etc. 15, 10, and 5 minutes before we would leave, I would give the kids a heads up that we would be going. It's probably the easiest thing in the whole world as a parent, and you can imagine the result. We never really had that end of playdate meltdown. They knew it was coming, they'd already thought through the process, and knew what to expect. It wasn't a surprise. I don't know what they were thinking exactly, but they didn't have to deal with the sudden change, which again is not necessarily easy for anyone, especially if it is getting near the end of the day and they're tired. So not just for playdates, but for anything you can think of, let them know what is happening in advance. Trust me, you'll be doing your child and yourself a huge favor. Tip number 3, attention is the thing they need most. I think people struggle a lot with what they need to be giving their child to have them grow up most successfully. I think we're bombarded with messages about the things that they need. But I think if you dig into these messages a little bit, you might find someone has a hidden agenda in promoting certain things. Freakonomics is an excellent book, and in it the authors discuss the very wide variance in car seat costs. I believe at the time in the early 2000s, car seats ranged from $60 to $300. Like college tuition and healthcare, this has probably doubled since then, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are some high-end elite car seats that cost more than a car. But are they really necessary? Looking at the data, $60 car seats were every bit as safe as the more expensive ones. But do you think that message will be communicated to consumers often? Everyone involved in manufacturing, advertising, and point of sale has a vested interest in making you think you need to buy something more expensive. And who among us is going to skimp on anything that would help keep our children safe? This is far from limited to car seats. Our entire experience of raising a child is a minefield of dread and guilt that we will not be doing enough or not choosing correctly and thereby committing our child to a lifetime of misery. And where we know this is parabolic, we at least fear we're being bad parents. But trust me, every store on the planet knows this. I have no data to support this, but I have a theory about all the candy that is in the checkout lines at stores. I'm sure you're familiar with the dizzying amount of sugary snacks that just happen to be where you and your child will be standing for several minutes while you wait to check out. I think people would assume this location is effective because parents eventually get tired of hearing their children beg for candy and they give in. But I think this location is effective for a much sadder reason. If you've ever been a parent, you've likely been pretty nervous about doing a good job. You probably worry about it a lot, and working against you is the fact that everyone is there to tell you that you're not doing a good job. Remember that there are lots of people with a lot to gain by making you feel concerned. And because it is an extremely open-ended job specification with only limited feedback that you'll get on your success, and that will be many years in the future, there's not a lot of ways for you to objectively measure your success. So I'm going to guess that at least part of the time you probably question how you're doing and believe you're not doing a good job. Then along comes this easy way for you to feel like you're doing something for your child in the form of a treat that they want. Yes, sugar is not the best choice long term, but we're talking about one small treat to make up for maybe getting mad at them earlier or losing your temper when you got home after a long day, or maybe feeling like you haven't gotten to spend enough time with them. This one act of getting them a candy bar that will make them happy is a small dopamine rush for them, but realize that it may even be more of a dopamine rush for you, feeling like maybe you were making up for something that you didn't or couldn't do at another time. I don't know if this is what motivates parents waiting with their kids in a checkout aisle of a store, but I have to think if it doesn't, something similar is happening every time we have to make a purchase or plan a party or do any of the million things we do for them. Maybe, we think, if we buy them something or get them something, maybe then we can make up for the other places that we will never forget that we feel like we may have failed. I was lucky in managing to avoid a lot of this guilt by giving them the thing that I believe they need most, my attention. Kids want a lot of things, and obviously they will need a lot of basics in their early years, but throughout, you really need to give them the one thing that every human being wants, but can make such a huge difference in this small human's life, and that is attention. Listen to what they're telling you. Ask them about their day. Talk to them about what scares them. Tell them when you don't know things. Help them understand the world around them, including themselves. There will be so many things you can't do for them, but being this larger, more capable, and more experienced version of themselves is what they need more than anything. Just be engaged with them. And you'll find that most of this guilt will simply disappear because you know there's no greater gift that you can possibly give them. Not everyone has the luxury of being able to see or be with their kids a lot, but trust me, if you can prioritize it and you can spend the energy to be with them as much as you can make a huge difference in their lives. Sometimes just helping them understand why they feel the way they do, which you will be uniquely qualified to do since you've been with them every day of their lives, is a thing that can dramatically impact their daily life. Tip number 4, who makes the rules? I've heard a lot of parents have the following talk with their kids. The parent tells the child to do something, the child asks why, and the parent says because they make the rules. I think this is the conventional wisdom, but this literally makes me wince every time I hear it. I took a completely different approach with my kids. I would tell them they needed to do something, and they would ask why, and I would tell them literally anything other than I made the rules. It really is not the case that a child needs to brush his teeth, clean up their clothes, or get ready for school because we make the rules as parents. If you explain to them why really they need to do what they're doing, you have a moment when you can teach them, but more importantly, you steer clear of the authoritarian idea that this is a police state and they're doing your bidding. Because honestly, you probably need to do the same exact things that they're doing. Why do you have to do it? This is what you need to explain. Sometimes I would explain to my kids that we did things because these are the rules. And they would say they didn't like my rules. So I would tell them, I don't make up the rules. I teach you the rules. If I made up the rules, we would sit around in our underwear playing video games. But unfortunately, things work a certain way, and we need to play by these rules. I think this approach works really well because your child realizes things like they will need to play by these rules forever, and that you're not making them do these things because you're mad or making them work. They will learn that they need to do things to be respectful of others. And they will also realize that you are all subject to the same natural laws, which transforms you from being their guard or supervisor to being their teacher. And I think that's a pretty powerful change in perspective. Tip number 5, the don't worry game. Most kids are afraid of things to some extent, and more anxious people like myself tend to have more anxious kids. If you have a child that is afraid, this is one of the best techniques I've ever used to help them, and it's based on the scientifically proven principle of conditioning. When I was very young, one of my favorite things was dinosaurs. Like a lot of kids, I looked at books about them and played with dinosaur toys and learned the names of them. So when my parents decided to take me to the Natural History Museum to see the dinosaur exhibits, I was extremely excited. But no one had prepared me for the enormous size of the dinosaur bones, with skeletons reaching probably 25 feet in the air, or enormous meat eaters with huge jaws and teeth. Close up to these towering skeletons, I was overwhelmed with fear, and I didn't understand anything about what I was feeling, other than I wanted to run away. But my mother picked up on my apprehension and led me away, far away, to the other side of the museum, where I could still see the skeletons, but they were seemingly very, very small. She talked to me for a while about other things, but then she pointed at the largest and said, "That skeleton looks pretty small from all the way over here, doesn't it? Does he seem scary from over here?" I looked at it for a second. I was not afraid. It was not towering over me, and it was no bigger than a picture in any book I would read. "No," I said, a little surprised. She took my hand and led me 10 paces closer. "How about now?" I looked again. He was still small. There was nothing to be afraid of. "No," I said again. We did this several more times until we started getting to where I needed to crane my neck to see his head. "What about now?" she asked. Something was very different now, even though I still felt a little uncomfortable. I had seen it from far away. I could always go away from it again. I was just standing there. Whatever had made me so afraid didn't seem to be affecting me now. I wasn't sure why, but I was not afraid. Eventually, we were standing directly under the skeleton again, and I was fine. In fact, now, instead of seeming scary, my love of dinosaurs was coming back to me. I was getting excited again. I was so amazed to be so close to an actual dinosaur. So what happened that changed how I felt? This technique probably doesn't seem like rocket science, and it's not, but it has its foundation in getting people over fear via conditioning. People have a variety of stimuli that cause fear responses, from things that are more or less evolutionary to bad experiences that we've had to a variety of other reasons. Our brains are conditioned to respond speedily to fear. If we experience it, our fight or flight mechanism kicks in and we move on. But often these responses are not really life-saving in our modern world. For anxious people, most fight or flight responses are very overblown, and the best way for us to get over them is to experience the stimuli multiple times in a safe environment. This trains our brains to realize that the stimuli is in fact not scary, which over time lowers our response. It's the mental equivalent of exposing your body to something that you have an allergic reaction to, so your body realizes it is safe and does not need to have the major immune response. As you can tell from my retelling of something from probably 50 years ago, I never forgot the experience of the Natural History Museum. So when my kids would be afraid of something, the first thing I would do is put some distance between us and whatever made them nervous and ask them, "Does this thing make you nervous from all the way over here?" You can always find creative ways for conditioning your children, even things that you can't move physically away from. My daughter was very nervous when the doctor would do basic vitals at a routine appointment. Finding a toy doctor kit was one of the best toys we ever got. I would pull it out regularly and we would play doctor. I would test her vitals and explain what we were doing. Her fear about doctors decreased a lot. I've spent a lot of time overanalyzing things with my kids, trying to understand what helps them and what makes them feel better. I have lots of tips like these that I think helped. Little things that made the job easier and also I hope made them more comfortable with the world around them. I'm sure I'll be sharing more, but I wanted to start with these that I thought were fun and hopefully easy to incorporate into your daily life parenting. These are things I've learned. Thanks for listening.